welcome back to the program. You're watching Morning Thailand with Bo and Golf. Now, moving on to the updates that we have. Unfortunately, at this point, once again, I have to update about the situation down south. Southern violence. There has been a report, several reports, but one in particular because is involved one of the ex-ranger that was shot at his house too, mind you. This is in Pattanai province. They say that the police got a report of 3 people that were shot at their house in Pattanai province and in the area. So they say that once the police officer got there, they have seen that 3 people altogether, they all related. Abdulrahim Matli, age 31, he's an ex-ranger. He was shot in several places around his body from the AK rifle. And this is, of course, is quite severe because they say that what happened was, this is a drive-by shooting where the shooters was driven a pickup truck. Normally we've seen them in motorcycle, but this time they used pickup truck and they drove by the house, shot several rounds of the bullets into the house itself, and that kind of hit Abdulrahim quite pointedly, and they say that the 2 people at the scene at the time as well is his sisters, 2 sisters, Fadila Matli as well as Sainab Matli. Now they say that they were actually were shot as well. So after the incident, the family took all 3 of them into the Pattanai hospital. However, Kun Abdulrahim, the brother, he succumbed to the wound. He did not quite make it to the hospital itself, so he died before he reached the hospital. But the other 2, his sisters, they're still in the intensive care. Now, moving on, there's also a report of a hit in Narathiwat province. Hami Tano, the Janet local politician, was shot dead as well. At this point, they're not sure whether or not this is southern violence in terms of the insurgents try to instigate violence, or was it a personal issue. And in Yala province, there's also a report of one of the pickup truck that belongs to the authorities went missing, and they believe that it might be used to plant a bomb in there to create a car bomb out of it. So they are trying to track down this particular car as well, and that's in Yatta sub-district. So I guess southern violence is still ongoing and continue, but hopefully at this point, I think we have a lot more issues here as well in the southern part of, in the central part of Thailand. So hopefully the situation down south will be a little bit better, because I think the peace talk is still ongoing in terms of discussion and see where it's going to take place next. So we might see some light at the end of the tunnel, but at this point, southern violence is still plaguing the south.
Okay, well, moving away from that case now, coming back to take a look at the taxes that you've mentioned about, and it could be some good news, of course, for some people that are going to be affected, and this is the personal tax rates that have already finally been approved, and accordingly, the cabinet has already approved in principle for this royal decree on the new progressive rates of the personal income tax, which is going to be implemented for 2013 and 2014 tax years, and this is coming from the government spokesman Thirat Ratana Sewi. Now, this decree, it will expand the tax rates from 5 to 7 brackets, and that will be adding new tax rates of 15% and also 25%. As to mention about last year, the cabinet approved the new personal income tax rates at 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, 25%, 30%, and 35%. And the existing rates are 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%, and 37%. Now, the top tax rate, it falls slightly to be at the 35% of the taxable income from 37%. while the tax exemption for annual income below 150,000 baht, that remains in place. And there are around 6 million people whose annual declared income is less than 150,000 baht, and taxpayers can apply for the new rate from January the 1st of 2014. Apart from that, Mr. Tirat also said that the new rates will benefit the majority of the taxpayers, of course, who are the lower income earners, and that will be providing them with the tax reductions of between 5% and 50%. And he added that the government hopes that the tax reduction here will help stimulate the domestic consumption, allowing the government to collect revenue from other sources, such as the value-added tax or VAT, and in order to compensate. And the royal decree will be examined by the Council of State before the legislation. So, all in all, I think in general, this is definitely, a great news. Anything that could help, the people, I guess. It's all, good news.
Well, at this point, the situation, we have to admit, the situation here in Thailand is not great for a lot of people in terms of income and the living standard at this point. So we have seen quite a bit of robberies that has been reported, as well as several other incidents that showcasing that we are in trouble in terms of individual economic status.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the demonstrations updates. At this point, there has been several demonstrations already in several places, but two in particular. One, of course, supporting the government. Another one is anti-government. And we know that they can, even though it's a blur line, but you can actually see that for the red shirt people, there's a lot of Pheu Thai Party MPs that actually got on stage showing their full support. So they have, it's almost become one of those political movements rather than the demonstration by the people. Unfortunately, it just has been that way due to the fact that, of course, even though Kun Suthep Thaeksuban has already resigned from being MP from the Democrat Party, technically he's still perceived because when he started the whole rally, it was started as the Democrat MP. So at this point, there has been several of talks in terms of which direction these demonstrations are leading to. Is it becoming too political driven? And we kind of know that already, the answer to it. Now they say that this is at the Ratchamankala Stadium. Of course, this is where all the red shirts people gathered, and they say that there were quite a bit of numbers of all the red shirt people that gathered in the area itself. They say that in this particular incident, there are several of the, as you can see, the stage was set up. As I mentioned, that there's also, in terms of the gathering, the people, as you can see, Kun Thida Thawan as well as Kun Jatuphon Prompan were there, and there are actually we can consider them a core leader of this particular movement. However, they also talked about the fact that there are several of the Pheu Thai MP that got on stage, including Kun Jaturon Chai Sang and such, talking about the situation there. And they say that at this point they are, and once again, Pheu Thai Party, or excuse me, the red shirt are saying that they are trying to fight for democracy at this point. This is Dr. Weng Tojirakan, of course, another core leader. And in this particular case, due to the fact that there are a lot more at the Ratchadamnoen rally as well. So the security has to be beefed up quite a bit in terms of trying to make sure that everything will not turn out to be in terms of violence. So at this point, the police already put in place several of the crowd control measures as the protesters are waiting for the court verdict today. Because obviously there would be a lot of gathering and they're waiting to see whether or not the senators, the verdict on the selection of the senators, which way it's going to turn out to. Now they say that at this point about 2 companies of policemen were deployed to secure the court compound and 20 officers taking up sentry duty to keep up with all the unauthorized individuals as well. Roadblocks are in place, a lot of barriers as well. Now they say that yesterday at about 10:30 p.m. at night, there was one of the officer that was arrested, Kun Thanin Kham Suphap. He was arrested because he was actually carrying guns around. But he also well, obviously this is after hours already. This is not on duty. He also acted as a guard to the rally at the Ratchadamnoen area as well. So the police have to arrest him and then taking away his gun because technically he's not on duty, he's not authorized to carry the gun in the public. So at this point, one was arrested already. However, they say that at this point, two main spots that the police will have to look into, especially for today. The first one I mentioned already is the Constitution Court, making sure that there's not going to be any violence instigating while they're waiting for the verdict. And the second one, sadly, is the Prime Minister's house, her private residence, because they say that today there's a talk about several of doctors and nurses that would march to her house or would gather in front of her house opposing this particular I guess the anti-government movement as well in terms of expressing their opposition to the government. However, when it comes to the privacy, this is her house.
Yeah.
I still don't think that's a good idea at all. Like, you can express your opinions and views, but as long as it doesn't go overboard.
Yeah, make it peaceful under the
and
frame
doesn't
of the
violate
law.
other people's privacy. And this is our Prime Minister's privacy, so I think at least give her a little bit more, space.
Give her private space.
Exactly. Now, they also talk about, in terms of a lot of protesters, as you will see today in a lot of front pages, is that the gathering was quite large numbers because, excuse me, there are they say that over 1,500, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot more. And same thing as in the Ratchadamnoen area as well. But they say that at this point, there has been a rumor, I would have to say, because there's nothing certain yet. But it's surfaced in the social media as well as a lot of reporters has been asking a lot of the police officials, the high-ranking authorities, about the rumors that there was one rangers talking about a gathering of weapons and firearms from southern part of Thailand that would bring in to the rally itself to instigate violence. And at this point, they say that this particular person, his initial is with a T, so who knows who he is. And he will actually be brought into to talk to the police officials, the high-ranking authorities, in terms of giving a little bit more tips where and how these weapons will be moving to, and then, and such. So at this point, I think that if you're gonna have to be in the area, be very, very careful, because sometimes it's not the rally itself. Sometimes there is a third person that involved, or you just got caught in something that's you don't want to be in. Now also from yesterday all the way to 24th, due to the security measures, they say that a lot of places, especially the nightlife, I would say, has been requested by the police to close down close down by 2 p.m. a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning. That I'm not sure why, but probably try to make sure that everybody's at home by that time, so they will keep security a little bit better. But be very, very careful this day. I don't want people to panic, but I think it's probably better safe than sorry.
Yeah, and I think, just to be sure, before you go anywhere or travel anywhere, just check the routes that you're going to, because you could be stuck in some really heavy traffic if you don't check the particular areas that could be one of the main gatherings of both sides, whether they are anti or pro for the government and administration. But at the moment, I think it's time for us to head for a break, and we will be back with more of the news updates, so please stay tuned.